Okay, it's Monday, February 5th, 2024, and we are finishing out The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 2, and we left off on page 207 under the Information and Privacy Act. All right, let's see. Let me close this down a little. All righty, here we go. The Privacy Act of 1974 states that each federal agency asking for information must tell you, 1, its legal right to ask for the information and whether the law states you must give up the requested data, 2, what major purpose the agency has to ask for it and its use, 3, what could happen if the questioning agency does not receive the information, and 4, what will the agency do with the information? The answer to number 4 is, quote, we may give your information to ... unquote. 1, the Department of Justice. 2, federal agencies as provided by law. We may also give it to any of the several states. 3, the District of Columbia, U.S. Commonwealths, or possessions to carry out their tax laws. And 4, to foreign governments because of tax treaties they have with the United States of America. Whether the agent dealing with you, okay, he's making a lot of mistakes towards the end of the book. Whether the agent dealing with your reports, whether the agent dealing with you reports this fact depends on his or her instructions and how much that agent knows about the law. In other words, there is no privacy. Do you want your records accessible to anyone who inquires? How much is it worth to you to protect those associated with the trust? To us, it is extremely important to ensure that friends and family are not dragged into tricky and complicated conversations. U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. Because of your second right to contract, you do not need to give agents any trust information. You need to know, though, what you are doing before you feel confident or brave enough to deal with government officials. Abby, come on, lay down. We suggest you be friendly. Ask the agents for their identification and personal addresses. Let them know you will cooperate required by law. Tell them to write the request, and this is to ensure documentation of events and procedures. Footnote on that says, further, you need their personal addresses because you may want to pursue their civilly for violations and infractions of the law if you discover the agent has acted beyond their jurisdiction. Ooh, nice one. It is important to know that it is not the responsibility of the general manager or the executive secretary of your trust to deal with any government agents. Only the trustees know how to ask a few questions to stop unauthorized and illegal inquiries. No officer in any trust has the right to surrender any documents to any agency without a specific court order for any reason. A specific court order must name exactly what is required. With proper training, trustees will be effective, make a proper judgment of the circumstances, and decide what is the best course of action for the trust. Above all else, if agents stop by, do not invite them into your home or office. They are not your friends and not here for a social chat. With the ability to see items in your home or office, a search warrant for them becomes much easier. The more they do not know, the better. Meet them in a neutral location, such as on the front porch, sidewalk, or in a park. Woohoo! I got that right. I didn't let them in my house. Search warrant. The trustees are the only ones with the authority to respond to a warrant. Agents may need to wait until a trustee shows up to act on the warrant. If presented with a search warrant, do not panic. Check to see if a judge signed it. Calmly look at the document and study the signature. If there is a signature, be sure you read it and ask the agents if this is a judge's signature. You may want to make them wait while you call the court to find out if there is a judge by that name who knew what he signed. Sometimes the warrants are unsigned. Justin ran into that problem. It happens that the warrant is defective because the address or name are misspelled. Wait, it happens that the warrant is defective because the address or name are misspelled. If even one character or number is wrong, it is incomplete. If there are large blank spaces, you cannot accept it because they may write something in after searching your premises. Using the word, quote, premises, unquote, on the warrant refers to fixed property only. Your car is not classified as a premise. When you realize the warrant is incomplete, hand it back to the agent and say, quote, this warrant is defective on its face. It will have to be redone, unquote. If the agent asks you what is wrong, reply, quote, it is not my responsibility to train you in legalities, unquote, or some such response. It is probably best if you do not help these organizations seeking to get into your business. Once access is granted, all people associated with the business are questioned. For this reason alone, be sure agencies abide by the law. And I believe Private Nobody spoke about this when he was talking about that one guy where they came to his door with the search warrant, and he said, that's not my name. That's not me, or something to that effect. And the cops left because he didn't possess ownership of the name, and therefore they could not possess ownership of him. Okay. Warrantless searches. Anybody else want to talk on that?
Yeah, I have a question, if I could.
Yeah.
So Private Nobody said that because the name didn't belong to him, basically, this gentleman said, that's not me.
Yeah, because it's
good.
the all-caps name. So, and he's not the name because if we remember correctly, he said the guy did an ANC and a power of attorney before these guys came to his apartment. So he had already set up all the legalities of proving the separation from the name.
And he was a trustee.
He was an agent. He's an agent for the name.
Oh my goodness. I mean, but was he a trustee to a trust?
No. They were just.
I'm looking at it like that. Like you could do that as a trustee to a trust.
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. The other question I had, what do you mean by power of attorney when you say that?
So
in conjunction with this thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's templates out there for power of attorneys. And you can search for them. I'm sure Private Nobody will be giving everybody a template that they will have to kind of, make it their own. But the power of attorney, I mean, think about it in a sense of a medical power of attorney. So the person will usually give another person legal access to make medical decisions on their behalf if they become unconscious or whatever. And that agent that they're giving authority to make medical decisions on their behalf if they're unconscious or unable to make a decision on their own has to stick by that power of attorney. So that power of attorney will let them know exactly like whether it's they want a DNR after certain circumstances happen to them, if they're technically brain dead for over so many days, then, they basically pull the plug. Medications that they will not take. So it's kind of like the trust. The trustee doesn't necessarily have carte blanche power to rule the trust how he sees fit. He has to follow that trust indenture to the T. And if there's things that leave the trustee in a position to like make a decision, that's why they say make that indenture like rock solid. So, and you always have to think ahead. So if A happens, then B is the result I want. Or if A and B happen, then C is the result. So you got to kind of think ahead, especially if it's a trust that's going to be going on for a couple generations. You want to make it as rock solid as possible and as easy for the trustees to make those decisions on the grantor's behalf. Because that's really all a trustee is doing, is just following the contract to the T and not going outside of those boundaries. So same thing with the power of attorney. What we're going to do in Private Nobody's workshop is basically we are going to put the all caps name as, let me just put it in perspective of like a medical power of attorney. So the patient's name would be the all caps name, and the agent would be the first middle name holder position. So the all caps name is giving permission to the agent to do certain things, handle certain matters. And that power of attorney will go pretty detailed and pretty deep. And so that's what we would do for the power of attorney, and it would be connected to the ANC. Does that make sense?
It does, but I have another question. So remember when Deep End was talking about doing the power of attorney, I guess for his mother, when she had to go in for a medical procedure. Can you, or should you, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I knew I had to go into the hospital for something. Would I do a power of attorney on my name, my all caps name, or no? No, I mean, like something stupid, like I wasn't going in to go under or anything. I broke a bone or something.
Well, I mean, honestly, for that, you wouldn't do a power of attorney. You would do it for in case of, if you were incapacitated mentally, like you were not in your right mind, delusional or something, then this person, the person would have to, or you would have to hit certain parameters in the power of attorney for the agent to take over and to have power.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Okay. I think I understand what it is, but then I'm overthinking it with the ANC thing. So, okay.
Yeah. And you'll start to see how, like, it's the all caps name is the name of the one who is giving the agent power to do things on the name's behalf. So that is what the power of attorney would be in that set of circumstances. And the agent, again, is just works for the principal, which is the all caps name, which is owned by the quote grantor, which is the government. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Okay. Where did we leave off? Wait, did I read search warrants? And now we're at warrantless searches? Anybody? Guys?
You stopped at warrantless.
Warrantless searches?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, warrantless searches. Of late, there has been the use of warrantless searches where no knock, quote unquote, allows officers to barge into the home. Some of them are being killed. And then it gives Vine Surprise now. The no knock searches get people killed. Okay, that's a book, evidently, or article. This is why no knocking was put into law. Sorry, this is why knocking was put into law. The powers that be do not want their people so easily killed. Superstitious transactions. Footnote 120 just says Privacy World 2006. What might set off an investigation? Usual business activity. Bullet point, what transactions are not suspicious? Bullet point, what transactions look suspicious? If your usual business involves deposits of $100 per week and suddenly you make deposits of $2,000, this may raise issues and questions. This is not normal business practice for you. Cash transaction litigation. Most Western countries around the world have passed cash transaction legislation, and it is almost identical wherever you go. In countries like the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, and other countries, anything over $10,000 per day is reported, and any amount the bank staff may consider suspicious. For example, if you walk into the bank with $8,000 cash to deposit and look nervous or hesitate to answer questions, the, quote, nice teller at window 3, unquote, may report you. Here is a brief list about transactions that will get you reported. What to avoid. Suspicious cash transactions trigger when a customer, 1, comes in with another customer and each goes to different tellers to conduct currency transactions of less than $10,000. 2, make large cash deposits containing many $50 and $100 bills. 3, conducts usual cash transactions through night deposit boxes, especially large sums that are not consistent with the customer's business. 4, makes frequent deposits or withdrawals of large amounts for no obvious business reason or for a business that does not create large amounts of cash. 5, conducts several large cash transactions at different branches on the same day. Suspicious non-cash deposits also bring attention when, bullet point, a customer deposits many traveler's checks, often in the same denomination and sequence. Bullet point, an increase in international wire transfer into an account with no history of such, or where the stated business of the customer does not warrant it. Bullet point, a customer receives many small wire transfers and then orders a large outgoing wire transfer to another country. Bullet point, a wire transfer that moves large sums of secrecy havens, or large sums to secrecy havens. The demise of bank secrecy laws. Not only are suspicious transactions dangerous, but the entire banking industry falls under scrutiny for any strange pattern. The biggest events in recent years surround offshore business, bank secrecy laws, and international business corporations, IBCs. There are 2 main task forces set up to reduce bank secrecy laws: protection, and privacy to make it easier for inquiring governments to get information. The Financial Action Task Force, FATF. The FATF is an intergovernmental body developing and promoting policies nationally and internationally to combat money laundering, unless, of course, they're doing the laundering. The FATF recommends to member nations regulations against money laundering and associated crimes. Privacy challenges by the FATF include the government's right to access banking records in offshore jurisdictions. If this occurs, it exposes the banking records of clients in offshore jurisdictions to foreign governments. Okay, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. Footnote says the OECD maintains a website at www.oecd.org. You can monitor what countries now cooperate to share banking records. In July 2007, Liberia joined the list. Report of harmful tax competition. Of more concern is the report of harmful tax competition. It has many so-called tax havens worried. The 34 OECD nations, including Australia, United Kingdom, and the United States, all have similar levels of corporate and personal tax tables. The unspoken position is that they want all their tax money, and these tax havens do not get to keep the funds. Those behind the OECD use their economic might to pressure these smaller and less powerful countries to give up their, quote, harmful tax practices, unquote. This is international bullying of monumental proportions. Many critics and supporters believe it violates countless international laws. What keeps many of these tax haven countries afloat is the tax haven status. These countries resist by telling the OECD they will not comply, probably until they get a better deal. The OECD targets many countries, but few surrendered in the past 2 years. The jurisdictions siding with the OECD to a certain degree are Cayman Islands, Mauritius, Malta, San Marino, Bahamas, and Belize. Summary. Knowledge is the best deterrent to fear. Privacy is the best way to keep beneficiaries and assets safe. Okay, now we're in chapter 19. Let's do that and stop. Okay. All right, chapter 19, Keys to the Future. We have given you information to build an empire, and at the very least, to pull your family together to create security and a better future. The implications of taking action to reformat your family into a business are vast. Here are the keys to create your own reality and form an interlocking support network. The one magic ingredient you need is the right leader. We touched on this in Volume 1. We wrote about the person who has the ability to bring in the money and to hook up that person to share the wealth for the family. Using those who do not have financial shrewdness but have other talents can contribute to having a stronger family. The leader. The natural leader has the strength to say no, the courage to go forward despite opposition, and to find new directions. He or she holds a vision of possibilities you may not see and has the force of will to convince others to join a new endeavor. Nature created certain signs to let the family know who the leader should be. Unfortunately, the way many handle their children usually thwarts nature's efforts. As unhappy as it will make your younger siblings, it is the firstborn who has the natural leadership abilities. In some families, because of jealousy, favoritism, and overwhelmed parents, the eldest becomes the, quote, nursemaid, unquote. The initial signature of leadership hardly works at all. And the most damning problem is often the younger siblings are too wounded and angry to allow the eldest to take the reins. Potential stopped? What does that mean? There is one particular pattern that stands out, and we are sure there are many like this in our society. The firstborn comes into a family where both the mother and the father are non-confrontational. Hardly able to fight for their rights, both adults choose the easy life. The firstborn has a strong will and dominant personality. Because these parents are unable to handle him or her to give him or her enough discipline and affection, he or she becomes angrier and angrier, rebelling to become disassociated from the family. The later born children are often weaker, and one of them becomes the favorite of the parents, to add only to the distress of the older child. The person who could turn this family into a productive force is no longer qualified, and none of the other siblings has the ability. It is the repressed, hovering anger coupled with a strong will that most leaders own. Harness and direct that rage, then a miracle happens. A transformation into a being who knows where he or she must go and what must be done. Leadership is genetic. The reason the firstborn gets the position is such a person gets first choice of the genetics and thus usually is stronger. Of course, this rule is not set in stone, and often the second or the third child has more of the interest than the first, who may have a different agenda. The point here, though, is to develop family leadership. Give the firstborn his or her chance. In our current social jumble, finding the leader may take some strategy, and it may be that no one in your family qualifies, but your brother or sister has a child to hold this key role. More than one. This is why we suggest setting up a true common law trust with several families. From grandparents on down, many members should jump in to build a network of support and wealth to withstand the challenges of the future. The trustees may hold the financial and legal reins, but there is so much more needed to getting a family together on the same path to be productive and a force of its own. Money, trade, and exchanges. Anybody have anything so far that they want to bring up? Okay. Money, trade, and exchanges. The purpose of reducing all financial transactions to numbers is for taxation. Without reporting the numbers, how could we be taxed? Give me 3 of your sheep. That is how it used to be. Taking care of sheep is much more difficult than counting numbers. Once the numbers happened, everyone became subject to taxation. Buttons and bears. There are certain key ideas about numbers and a money format that are simple and basic. For example, anything can be used as money. We remember the stories when the Europeans came to America and the American Indians were eager to trade furs for buttons. So, remove from your mind that only paper bills are money. The value is in the trade. We trade paper for food, and that is just as ridiculous as trading buttons for bearskins. Debt deal. If you take what you believe to be a dollar bill out of your wallet right now and look at it, you will discover it is a federal note. That is a promissory note, and it has no backing. It is debt, not money. This is just Ellen Hodgkins Brown, JD, The Web of Debt, The Shocking Truth About Our Money System, The Sleight of Hand That Has Trapped Us in debt, and how we can break free. That means if this phony dollar was devalued, it could become worthless. Conversely, real dollars were silver certificates, and you could take them to a bank to exchange them for silver coins or bars. The United States became a rich country when U.S. dollar backed by gold and silver in Fort Knox was the standard for the world. The international bankers took all the gold and silver in a bizarre, twisted financial maneuver reported in several books. One of those is called We Hold These Truths by Mortimer J. Elder. And then Cleon Golson, A Need for Monetary Reform, Freeman Institute. And then Secrets of the Federal Reserve. Ooh, that would be a good book to read. Bankers Research Institute. Media's dictation. The media keeps the money moving and thus convinces you it has value by showing you a constant parade of goodies this Federal Reserve note buys. The media control what you see and what you hear. This includes television, film, publishing, online holdings, theme parks, and other miscellaneous ventures. The names of the big six who control what you think you know are General Electric, Walt Disney, News Corp, CBS, Viacom. I think it's CBS Viacom now. Clear Channel, because CBS and Viacom merged. Many people are aware of the danger of controlling our thinking. In an article from the Free Press, we find this comment. Most progressives already know the nation's media are in the hands of the few, the rich, the white, and the male. We know that local control of the airwaves and newspapers is as rare as a fair and balanced Fox News report, and as tenuous as Cheney's stuttering heart. We know that to create any lasting and systemic social change, out with the old, in with the bold, we must take back the media that we've lost. Our, quote, 5 corporations own all of the world's media, unquote, routine is getting a little tired. It's about time we beefed up our knowledge about how our internet is threatened, how print magazines are blowing like Tony Blair under postal rate hikes, who's slapping the hands of communities reaching for radio stations, and who's kissing whom on the CEO playground. Irrelevant maybe, but we are below blackmail. But are we below, oh my gosh, say that 5 times fast. But are we below blackmail? Say below blackmail 5 times fast. It's not good. Megan Taddy, who controls media today and how the people can take it back. It's an article. Virtual lockdown. With a powerful grip on the information access, we live in virtual lockdown. All of these media giants must ensure the money design remains in place. Otherwise, they lose their power. Your evening news deletes anything too upsetting for you to know or waters down the facts. The news parades murders, wars, victims of crime, fires, many disasters, and election battles, while the advertising between news spots convinces you to spend your money or invest it. Telling you about the complexities of money, though, does not happen. Using the excuse most people cannot understand the details, they keep our programmed expectations solidly in place, thus assuring their own job security. Ain't that true? Okay, anybody want to talk about that? Okay, onward and upward. Key to financial security. Where the common law trust becomes a threat is it holds the key to financial security by supporting different values. The trust certificates come backed by the trust's worth. If the trust owns a farm, the economy slips. The trust certificates become more significant because of this superior backing. The farm supplies food. No one will starve. With enough land, shelters can be built. This is a true asset. The assets in the trust are not limited to the goods. They include the talent for potential creation of wealth. Wealth is not limited to the numbers in the bank. It includes any ability to offer support. With shelter, food, and clothing handled, a group of people can build a city, invent new transportation, create new kinds of technology. As mentioned before, people of the trust are the asset, not the stuff in the trust. Gold warehouses. Because of your mental programming, we realize this is a hard notion to grasp, but this is exactly how the current paper money unit started. In the 1700s, there were warehouses of gold. People stored their gold and received a note to recover the gold when needed. Gold is heavy and awkward to exchange, while this piece of paper backed by the gold was much easier to use. Instead of trading the gold, people paid for goods using the receipt from the warehouse. Anyone with the paper could go to the warehouse to claim the gold. Therefore, it became the way of business to use the paper to trade instead of the gold. This was a revival of a practice by the Knights Templar. Interesting. Circa 1100 to 1300 AD, in what was the first routine system of international banking operating across Europe and into the Holy Land. Oh, gosh. Okay, where was that? Oh, there it is. Ow. Okay, interest-based loans. Those who owned the warehouse noticed people did not come back for the gold, so lent with interest 10 notes to 1 bar of gold. Still, people never came back to collect the gold, so these warehouse bankers issued more notes per gold. As you can see, this developed into our profound money scheme with its intricate web of interest based on imagination, an unlimited supply of Federal Reserve notes printed when convenient. The more they print, the more devalued the money becomes. Ain't that true? Certificates. The common law trust creates money by agreement, and here lies the danger and threat to those in power. If enough people come together to create another powerful exchange complex, anything can happen, which is exactly what the powers who control your mind do not want. It is a short step from a trust certificate, returned to the Board of Trustees before assigning or trading it to another, to creating a money format backed by a different value. What hinders you the most from exploring this possibility is you need the current financial reality too. You have your own vested interest in keeping your life the way it is, or do you? The Franklin mistake. One of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, made an innocent error. Eventually, the truth would have escaped anyway, but Franklin probably brought about the demise of America's financial system sooner. According to a radio broadcast in 1941, we discover this startling information. Okay, Charles G. Binder Cup, Congressman. American created its own money. How Benjamin Franklin made New England prosperous. It's appearing on the web, courtesy of. Okay, never mind. Where'd you go? Okay, there you are. The following historical story is taken from a radio address given by Congressman Charles G. Binderup of Nebraska some 50 years ago and was reprinted in Unrobbing the Ghosts of Wall Street. Colonies more prosperous than the home country. Before the American War for Independence in 1776, the colonized part of what is today the United States of America was a possession of England. It was called New England and was made up of 13 colonies, which became the first 13 states of the Great Republic. Around 1750, this New England was very prosperous. Benjamin Franklin was able to write, "There was abundance in the colonies, and peace was reigning on every border. It was difficult and even impossible to find a happier and more prosperous nation in all the surface of the globe. Comfort was prevailing in every home. The people, in general, kept the highest moral standards, and education was widely spread." When Benjamin Franklin went over to England to represent the interests of the colonies, he saw a completely different situation. The working population of this country was gnawed by hunger and poverty. "The streets are covered with beggars and tramps," he wrote. He asked his English friends how England, with all its wealth, could have so much poverty among its working class or classes. His friends replied that England was a prey to a terrible condition. It had too many workers. The rich said they were already overburdened with taxes and could not pay more to relieve the needs and poverty of this mass of workers. Several rich Englishmen of that time actually believed, along with Malthus, that wars and plagues were necessary to rid the country from manpower surpluses. Sounds kind of like the overpopulation that the UN and Bill Gates is trying to push. Franklin's friends, what?
And I agree. It's depopulation. Too many people.
Yep. And so we have to have wars and plagues to get rid of them. Franklin's friends then asked him how the American colonies managed to collect enough money to support their poor houses, and how they could overcome this plague of pauperism. Franklin replied, "We have no poorhouses in the colonies, and if we had some, there would be nobody to put them in, since there is, in the colonies, not a single unemployed person, neither beggars nor tramps." Is that before or after you did your little Hellfire Club ritual there, Ben? Thanks a lot. Thanks to free money issued by the nation. His friends could not believe their ears, and even less understand this fact, since when the English poorhouses and jails became too cluttered, England shipped those poor wretches and down and outs like cattle and discharged on the quarries of the colonies. Those who had survived the poverty, dirtiness, and deprivations of the journey. At that time, England threw into jail those who could not pay their debts. They therefore asked Franklin how he could explain the remarkable prosperity of the New England colonies. Franklin replied, "That is simple. In the colonies, we issue our own paper money. It is called colonial scrip. We issue it in proper proportion to make the goods and pass easily from the producers of the consumers. In this manner, creating ourselves in our own paper money, we control its purchasing power, and we have no interest to pay to no one." According to this transcript, the English bankers took steps to get the British Parliament to pass laws forbidding the use of scrip money. So, what do we learn from that? Ben Franklin was really good friends with some international bankers. Crazy that. From this, we learn creating money is easy. Managing it is an art form, and that those who wish to control every part of our lives will stop at nothing to ensure their dominance. Herein lies the real secret, and why the international banking was so intensely dedicated to ensuring we never know that money is created by agreement, and we can change our mind anytime. We found another point of view about the issue of colonial scrip. The Bank of England has played a prominent role in American history. Without it, the United States would not exist. The American colonists considered themselves loyal Englishmen to a man, but when they began to enjoy unequaled prosperity by printing and circulating their own colonial script, the stockholders of the Bank of England went to George III and informed him that their monopoly of interest-bearing notes in the colonies was at stake. He banned the script, with the result that there was an immediate depression in the commercial life of the Americas. This was the cause of the rebellion. As Benjamin Franklin pointed out, the little tax on tea, amounting to about $1 a year per American family, could have been borne, but the colonists could not survive the banning of their own money. Yet the war was all about money. Okay, 127 is the World Order, a study of the hegemony of parasitism. I don't even know what that means. So, anybody want to talk about that?
It's about parasites.
Ah, yes. Yes, bankers are parasites. Yeah, this is starting to make sense of why the war happened. Because the bankers wanted to get control and put everybody in poverty and make them all paupers. Okay, legalities. Another cause keeping the current financial powers in place is the legal organization. With its powerful vested interest, it neglects morals, ethics, and the law to keep its status. Rewarded for cleverness instead of morality, these victors in this system laugh all the way to the bank. So far, with the sampling we have done, every lawyer we have charged with selling out has never disagreed. Hey, can anyone jump in and read?
Adversary system. Our law procedure, known as the adversary system, puts truth secondary to winning. This reality is so rampant that a book, published on the internet, details the scramble of legal priorities. Here is an excerpt. First, what are lawyers? Harvard ethics professor Arthur Applebaum said in 1995, lawyers might accurately be described as serial liars because they repeatedly try to induce others to believe in the truth of propositions or in the validity of arguments that they believe to be false. I assume he meant the 40% who are trial lawyers. Did we read that part yet? Eustace Mullins, The World Order, A Study in the Hegemony of Parasitism.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a footnote.
Second, what is justice? A former Australian federal court judge, Russell Fox QC, says in Justice in the 21st Century, Cavendish 2000, that justice means fairness. Fairness requires truth. Truth means reality. And the search for truth gives a system of a moral face, otherwise the likely winner will merely be the one with the most resources. So everything turns on truth. The adversary system does not search for the truth, and trial lawyers control the evidence, hence the process and hence the money. Judges control the courtroom, but are untrained, ignorant of the facts, and passive. The investigative system is the opposite. It searches for the truth, and trained judges control the process.
Hang on. So these footnotes. So see Appendix G or J. Let me see. Have we already read J? No, we haven't. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. Man, seriously. I'm going to go ahead and read the appendix, and then we'll bring it back to you. So Appendix J is actually, if anyone has the stuff open, it's page 481. Talks about legal. Justice and legality are two different issues. We have a basic idea in our mind that justice has morals and ethics, and that what is fair and right wins in the end. Our legal setup does not incorporate justice in the same pure essence. What is right is a matter of interpretation, and using our procedural methods, presentation becomes key. The complexities of life, with their many twists and turns, create an unending panorama of every conceivable predicament. The court game. The innocent often serve prison time, while murderers and thieves run amok. Some astute researchers have noticed the history of the word court. Taking its roots back in time, the judge can be viewed as a referee in a ball game, similar to tennis, while the lawyers are the players. This is why the judge manages the discussion between the lawyers who try to grand slam each other, hoping their opponent will miss the ball or not have a comeback to the argument. In the end, the judge decides, but only based on the information given to him or her. It is not the judge's job to do the research of the case. Thus, justice becomes subject to the one who is more clever, who has researched the law to make it apply more favorable in his or her case. Sadly, the favorable decision often goes to the side with more money and resources than the other. The procedure is awkward. Thus, those who have not stood before a judge will find their first attempt unnerving. Further, not many lawyers go frequently to court, and training to stand before a judge is limited, even in law school. The gray area of truth. The truth is often immaterial under the American system of jurisprudence. The lawyer does not need to know whether his or her client tells the truth, only whether the client's position can win the argument. Therefore, accepting a client depends on the strength of the argument. Is the other side likely to cave in, or is the law weighty in the lawyer's client's favor? None of this has anything to do with justice. We have spoken with lawyers who know a particular position is right, but they do not want to get involved, do not want to do the research, or they need far more money up front than is available. Comfort and a sure argument weigh heavily when deciding what clients to take and which ones to pass. Money and battles. That brings us to the other part, money. The poor and the rich have access to the courts, but the members of the middle class do not unless they represent themselves pro se. This is because legal fees run anywhere from $150 an hour to over $1,000 an hour for the higher paid defense attorneys. Please note, they get paid whether the client wins or loses. Many lawyers get easy money and are not interested in challenges, but only to ensure the buck's in the bank. Why take the risk? Why stress over something when the same amount of money can be earned on easier cases? Do you blame them? If the client takes responsibility for directing the case, it is much easier for a lawyer to act. Once you know what you have to do, you have done the research and insist on performance in a particular argument, the lawyer can always turn to you and shrug his or her shoulders if you lose. Well, that is what you wanted me to do. The prohibitive cost of being right. Lawsuits begin at $50,000 to you or the trust. If the money in the lawsuit will not gain more than $50,000, then do not start. Most lawsuits run about $100,000 to $200,000 and up. This leaves the middle class to defend itself, which takes skill. In Volume 1, we discussed contracts and said the black race became enslaved because it had no right to contract and did not did not have access to the courts to sue. This is what has now happened to the middle class. You can make contracts, but to enforce them is costly. Unless your trust has a strong cash flow, your only defense may be your ability to stand before a judge. This task is not impossible, and although daunting, once determination sets in, an uninitiated trustee can be unusually effective, using arguments a lawyer would not dare to say because of various obligations and connections within the courts, because their duty is to the court first. That's why. The legal matters presented below are a smattering of subjects we feel every trustee should know. Because the court cases are too long for this appendix, we have taken out several paragraphs marked by ... from some of the cases, leaving random information so you may eventually become familiar with the subject matter. Okay, I think that's it.
Shall I read some more?
Yep.
Trust leverage. The common law trust has within it the potential to take care of its own disputes, many times without using the courts. Further, the trustees and protector may have more power than the courts if the beneficial distribution can be slowed or ended when the beneficiary becomes too difficult. Where the courts hold power is levying a bank account or locking people away. If more people take charge of their own conduct, using their trusts to manage themselves, the courts are not so needed. Given our current reality, we doubt the legal complex is threatened by this notion. Not until enough people step forward to change their own lives and their families will there be any impact on the courts. If this idea took hold, it would be a couple of generations before any legalities were affected. Freedom. For our purposes, we define freedom as the right to decide our own destiny and make decisions about your life. We now examine what this means. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 2. In most safari expeditions in the Animal Preserve Shambhala in Acton, California, the guide tells you that a particular tiger or lion in the wild has a lifespan of about 3 to 4 years, a hard life, destined to an early doom. Wild animals living in zoos or at Shambhala have a life expectancy between 20 and 25 years. It makes us ponder, what is freedom? To continue this discussion, we define evil as unbridled freedom. Destiny. Somewhere in the middle of good and evil, freedom exists, but must be constrained to be productive. And is this freedom? Do you really control your own destiny? Your decisions impact others, and how much of your freedom do you choose to give up to ensure food on the table and comfort? Because of the heavy responsibility to support a family, there are some corporations that only allow those married with children in management positions. Once obligated, these parents are likely to toe the line, betting that marriage and parenthood enslave the corporation gets the longevity and loyalty necessary. It is not likely one with a commitment to a family will be job hopping. Perhaps we can say that freedom is the right to choose your enslavement. Some of those bonds enlist you for many years, and some are nearly impossible to reverse. The double-edged sword of contracts. We have discussed that Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution secures our right to contract. Although this gives you the right to create a common law trust, it does not make any guarantees that your contract will turn out the way you planned. The other half of the story about the obligation of contracts is that you have a right to make binding agreements, and this includes the right to make foolish ones. You can also make contracts to restrict your freedom. Further, as we mentioned in Volume 1, through quantum meruit and other quasi-contracts, you can unknowingly enter a contract where you accept benefits and then later discover what you owe. We pointed out to you that once a person accepts welfare, he or she gives up Fourth Amendment rights. In an article in Anti-Shyster magazine, Alfred Adask mentioned that impairing the obligation of contracts empowers the government to seduce us into trust contrary to our interests. Schools undermine freedom. Further, freedom needs an educated population, but those in power are clearly against this idea. We know the schools are under siege. Funds granted to them never arrive or are less than promised. Further, there is a systematic scheme to create compartmentalized learning to dumb our children down. This technique has been in place since World War I, when Germany figured out how to make sure people could not think for themselves. Imposing this diabolical scheme prevented rioting. The details are in a book written by John Taylor Gatto. Family Government. Oh, do you want me to go to the footnote? Skipped a few.
No, they're just names of books.
Okay. Family Government. We need to decide what freedoms we keep and what we must surrender to survive. We can best do this by creating a safe space for our family to evolve and grow. What we propose is the family become its own government. By bringing the family together where care and love become part of the mix, it is possible we could set a foundation to heal this world. Enough people need to join in to make a difference. Corporate history. Before we segue into creating the paperwork to set up a trust, let us take a lesson from corporate history. Trusts are for the family, for the members to support each other. Originally, corporations were set up for the interest of the community. We do not want to lose sight of where we're going with the trust idea. Here is a brief overview of how corporations took over. The other part of the story is the development of corporations, which is an interesting story in itself. Adam Smith didn't say much about them, but he did criticize the early stages of them. Jefferson lived long enough to see the beginnings, and he was very strongly opposed to them. But the development of corporations really took place in the early 20th century and very late in the 19th century. Originally, corporations existed as a public service. People would get together to build a bridge and they would be incorporated for that purpose by the state. They built the bridge and that's it. They were supposed to have a public interest function. Well, into the 1870s, states were removing corporate charters. They were granted by the state. They didn't have any other authority. They were fictions. They were removing corporate charters because they weren't serving a public function. But then you get into the period of the trusts and various efforts to consolidate power that were beginning to be made in the late 19th century. It's interesting to look at the literature. The courts didn't really accept it. There were some hints about it. It wasn't until the early 20th century that courts and lawyers designed a new socioeconomic system. It was never done by legislation. It was done mostly by courts and lawyers and the power they could exercise over individual states. New Jersey was the first state to offer corporations any right they wanted. Of course, all the capital in the country suddenly started to flow to New Jersey for obvious reasons. Then the other states had to do the same thing just to defend themselves or be wiped out. It's kind of a small scale globalization. Then the courts and the corporate lawyers came along and created a whole new body of doctrine which gave corporations authority and power that they never had before. If you look at the background of it, it's the same background that led to fascism and Bolshevism. A lot of it was supported by people called progressives for these reasons. They said individual rights are gone. We are in a period of corporatization of power, consolidation of power, centralization. That's supposed to be good if you're a progressive, like a Marxist Leninist. Out of that same background came three major things: fascism, Bolshevism, and corporate tyranny. They all grew out of the same more or less Hegelian roots. It's fairly recent. We think of corporations as immutable, but they were designed. It was a conscious design which worked as Adam Smith said. The principal architects of policy consolidate state power and use it for their interests. It was certainly not popular will. It's basically court decisions and lawyers' decisions, which created a form of private tyranny which is now more massive in many ways than even state tyranny was. These are major parts of modern 20th century history. The classical liberals would be horrified. They didn't even imagine this. But the smaller things that they saw, they were already horrified about. This would have totally scandalized Adam Smith or Jefferson or anyone like that. As we mentioned in Volume 1, leave the major business activity to partnerships or corporations. Leave the major family as a business to the world of trusts. The following glossary, a mind-boggling collection of trust-related words, is followed by a comprehensive appendix. It gives you the blueprint for survival, change, and growth. Use it well.
And there we have it, folks.
Wow.
Finally finished it. Yeah, the thing of it is that the federal government runs corporations. So I don't know why Adam Smith or Jefferson would have found it to be scandalous, because they're the ones that created the federal government. But
Myself, I have trouble imagining setting up and having a successful family trust, considering how my family and most families I know of, everybody goes different directions, like go off to college and then move away. And I don't know. They don't work and live together anymore.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is the government tries to dismantle the family. They try to get them having war within itself. And, it's everybody for themselves. It's this survivalist mentality instead of a collective mentality where everybody works to the betterment of everyone. And
individuals. Well, I mean, right now, every man for himself, it's kind of like that.
Yeah. And I mean, now you can see why the government wanted to break up the family so badly. Wants divorce, wants kids, angry at their parents, wants parents angry at their kids. Because if families got together, the grandparents and the parents and the children all were focused on building family wealth and taking care of each other, then we wouldn't be such a burden on government wanting Social Security and all this kind of stuff. But the government wants us to be dependent upon them, because that way they can control us better that way.
Can anyone in this group imagine having a family trust like this and, have it being successful? I mean, it's just hard for me to imagine.
When I think about trust, I think about the Amish, the way they kind of have their thing going, and they seem to get along. But they put people in different places, not everybody's doing farming. Some are carpenters, some are sewers, But it seems like they want the land and they stick together. I don't know how they do that, but that's what I think about a successful trust.
Yeah. They have the right concept, but they themselves are not good at it either, because like if you step out of line even one bit, they literally throw you out of the community and don't talk to you. They don't let your family talk to you. It's very like all or nothing. There's a lot of abuse, a lot of child abuse happening in the Amish.
Just looking at the concept.
No, I get it. Especially when, if someone needs a farm, like a farmhouse, what the hell do you call those things? Barn, sorry. Like the whole community gets together and builds the barn for that family. And they have a very collective mindset, taking care of the elders and stuff. But it's, I don't know. I don't know if because man's flesh gets in the way, and and it's like all or nothing, because in trust, you really have to have somebody like, okay, so say you had a kid who had an issue with gambling, or a kid who had an issue with alcohol or something like that. They tell you, okay, well, don't leave that child out completely, because you want them to be involved. You want to be able to help them out of this situation, because if you kick him out and make him like ostracize him, he will end up making trouble for the trust. So you really have to have somebody in the trust who really, like they were talking about, is a leader, and that can make decisions for the collective, and really put kind of their heart in it, but also can use their head in certain instances as well, because like, you've got to be a good business person, and know when to give somebody a role and when not to give somebody a role. But all the time making sure that everybody is included, because they were even saying, because I think one of the examples was there was someone who had a gambling problem in Vegas, and they gave him a role in the trusts, but not a role that could pull money out. So, it made him feel as though he wasn't being kicked out, and he would get money ever so often, just like the other family members. So it's a teeter-totter almost. It's like you really have to have a good balancing act to be able to, especially to be able to do like a generational trust. Because you really got to think ahead, and then you gotta, it's almost like you really have to produce a lot of children just in case, the one child doesn't do well. You've got at least, 3 others to choose from that can maybe be good at, taking control of the trust when they get older and training them up.
Curious about this book. Did the book come out of their experience of family trust, or did they write the book and then, it must have come out of their experience. And then I remember when I saw the video of Gwen and talking about like the origin or something. And she brought up that she had practiced transcendental meditation for a long time. And I was wondering now, I wonder what that has to do with anything except maybe keeping calm or something. But she mentioned that as like a factor in, I don't know what. It was kind of weird.
They even mentioned that in one of the appendixes.
Really?
Reincarnation and things of that stuff. Yeah.
Really?
I think was it in this one or was it in book 1, volume 1?
I don't remember hearing it. So it was probably book 1.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, they must have set up a trust and practiced and then wrote this book based on their experience or something.
Well, I think they dealt with these were lawyers and people who worked in trusts, and so there were examples of some of their clients. I'm sure they themselves probably set up some trusts, but it was mostly taken from an array of instances where they had clients that, they had to come up with kind of answers to the questions of, search warrants and whatnot. And they've seen a lot of trusts that were done badly, a lot of trusts that were done good. Because I remember them saying that, they can't give out too much information. They would have to there were certain instances, certain information that they couldn't give, but they would give like a general kind of breakdown. So I'm sure they themselves were doing a lot of trust work.
Sure, this works. Go ahead.
I have a thought.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so my thought is that the trust you set up, it doesn't have to be with your children. You can pick anybody you want to set up a trust because, like you said, the family unit in a lot of situations is broken. But I think when you pick certain people to start your trust, that's where you're going to grow it from. That's just my thought because, you can get your family involved in it, but do they even want to be involved? They don't even want to know half of the stuff you're learning. Exactly. You're the weird one. You know what I mean? So like Deep End said, we should set up a trust among us or something. Remember him mentioning something like that, which would be really cool just to get the idea of how to do it. And you never know. This could be our new family.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that we should definitely discuss that more. Because I just kind of want to see what it's like to set it up and do board of trustee meetings and all of that kind of stuff and see what we can do with it. They state, to try to keep it in the family because you will always be related to those people. But yeah, you can definitely do a trust with friends. I would rather do a trust with a group of people who want to know about trust and want to be able to grow a trust than to do it with my family members who think I'm cuckoo crazy.
Why? Oh, sorry. Okay. Why don't we do like a mock trust? I'm really interested in the indenture. The indenture is the laws. Like, how do you write that up? I think collectively with all of us, we would come up with some really really good ideas and things that we would miss on our own, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, there are some templates out there of how to go about that. I don't know, maybe we can all pick a day to we'll just create another channel and create like a mock trust. Kind of like Monopoly.
It seems like if there was a common like humanitarian project or common purpose or something, that would be a good reason to, and people are interested in that project, that would be a reason to set up a trust, you know?
Yeah.
Make it real. Just limit how much of an investment there is, and then who knows what it could grow into.
Yeah, we would need someone maybe good with stocks, bonds, someone who's got a good business head that can grow the money. We would all put in like a bare minimum. We'd have to figure out what that amount would be. Because I know my friend who was coming to these book readings, he was interested when Deepan had mentioned that. He was interested in doing that, like putting together a small trust and seeing what we could do with it. So maybe I'll send out a message to everybody who's a regular with, who's been reading a lot with us, and see if we want to actually just pick a day and like talk about it. I think that would be good. Okay, so I will figure that out and I'll send out some DMs, or I'll make another channel where we can all congregate and talk about this some more. But in the meantime, why don't you all give me, hold on, I gotta move. Have you guys been thinking about, I know Elle has, but why don't you all give me a name of the next book you would like to read to replace the our Monday reading. Let me see, where's that? All right, so we have Fruit from Poisonous. It was Fruit from the Poisonous Tree, right, Elle? Come on. What the heck? Why is this not opening? All right. Okay. That dadgummit. Ah, dadgummit. Stupid. Okay. Judy gave one. Let's do this. All right. Judy said Bogart handbook of the law of trust. Oh, because you found that 1921 version, right? Judy?
Judy. The 1921 I've had on my computer for probably quite a few years. It's out there in the public domain on a Google book, but the 1942, which is what I had trouble finding, which tells how trusts, it gives more information after 1933 about things that they didn't want us to know.
Oh, right.
And I'm actually getting the whole rest of the series up to 90. It was republished every 10 years with a new edition, and I'm getting all of them so I can compare them all from the public library, through the public library.
So do you want that to be the book that you want to put in the?
I guess, I would like somebody else to look at the 1921 and just see what they think. I think it would be good foundational material from an expert. This Bogart was like classic, So I don't know. I mean, I'd like somebody else's opinion. And if there's another book that's a better trust book, that's fine. I don't care. I'm not wedded.
Everybody's going to give their what book they would like to read next, and then I'm just going to pull it from a hat. So if that is a book that you think would be good for us to read, then I'll go ahead and put it down for your pick. But Marie, which one did you want?
I was just going to say that one is 700 pages, just so you know. I don't know, but I have a law library that I put together, and you could look at it for ideas if you like, or, I would like to share it with the group. If it's in Mega NZ, so if you have an account there, then you can give me your Mega email, and I'll give you my email, and then you put the email in your Mega account as a contact, and then when I see that notification for that, I can share the Science of Law library with you.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Why don't you put that in the general folder of like where we would need to go to sign up with that?
Okay.
Joe, do you have a book that you want to mention, put in the hat?
I was interested, and I don't know if the group is, but I was interested in the Levine's Manual on Commercial Law, but not on the whole book, on the chapter on commercial paper. You know what I meant? I have the book at home. I went to look it up and let you guys know, but I just think my thought process is everything's commercial paper, banking, and I'm a little clueless on it. So, I mean, I am totally interested in the trust, but I think I want to just kind of understand what our world's doing to us. Anyway, that's kind of my pick right now.
Can you write it down on
Sure.
one of those things so I can
Want me to, what do you mean? On what thing? Like send it to you?
Folder? Yeah, or DM it to me.
Okay, I'll DM it to you.
Anna, do you have a book pick?
Hi. I have not picked a book because all the books everybody speaks about is very interesting, so I'd go with any one of them. Did I take the easy way out or what?
Yes, you did. We need more choices, people. Come on. What about Behold a Pale Horse or a Gilbert's Law Summary for commercial paperwork or contract law or trust law or a banking book? Oh, the book.
Banking book would be good. Yeah, that's good because they kind of keep us in the dark on all that.
What was the one that we just read about that I was like, ooh, that might be interesting. It was in the appendix.
Oh, reading The Great Taking would be that the guy just published last summer. That would be good. It's kind of depressing.
What is it called?
The Great Taking. But it's more about like the banking system and how they're taking everybody,
How about The Creature from Jekyll Island? Has anybody actually read it? I read part of it.
Okay, we'll do that. Creature from Jekyll. I spelled Jekyll wrong. Jekyll.
I do have a book. I don't know the name of it. It's a PDF, but I printed it. And I think it's the book on the secret the bankers don't want you to know, something like to that effect. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But allegedly, they show you the accounting in there on how they're doing it and stuff. I don't know. It's not a big book, but just throwing it out there. Butch that up, huh?
Yeah.
It sounds really interesting, though.
What is this? The Web of Debt, the shocking truth about our money system, the sleight of hand that has trapped us in debt and how we can break free.
Yeah, that sounds like a winner.
Okay.
Sheila might have a suggestion too. I don't know if she sent anything to you.
I just want to make sure that there is, okay. The Web of Debt, the shocking truth about our money. Okay, that's available to download on the archive. Debt.
I think we should really, this is a great book, just popped into my head. I think we should read the original of Wizard of Oz. Isn't that about the money system?
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about. Well, it is, but I mean, The Wizard of Oz is just a story, but it's the I think there's
It
a
was an
video.
allegory. The guy
Yeah.
that originally wrote it was an allegory about the money system.
Yeah. I think there's on YouTube, there's a video on that.
My other thought is, should we stick to trusts? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. This web of debt thing looks pretty freaking interesting. Oh, look at that. Page 201 says, goodbye, Yellow Brick Road, from gold reserves to petrodollars. There's also, where did it go?
What about the money? What is it? Modern money mechanics? Is that a banking book?
The Federal Reserve.
Yeah, it's real thin. I actually have it. It's a real thin book.
Oh, okay, let's close that out. What's the name of the one? Hold on for a second.
Judy, I think that modern money mechanics has the accounting, has the private accounting. They show you the how they account on the private side.
Okay, there's also The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larkin Rose. So this is 200 pages. This one's a really good one as well. This was recommended by Private Nobody. All right. Okay, so this one says, oh, this is just an article. Okay, so this one says, The Wizard of Oz is a beloved award-winning film that spun into a cultural phenomenon But did you know there's a secret meaning behind Dorothy's adventure? Some historians and economic believe that the tale represents how America navigated the gold standard from the yellow brick road to the Emerald City. Each character and circumstance we encounter represents a different faction of the U.S. during the 19th and 20th century. So, yeah, I don't think that there was an actual book about this, but more like breaking down what it meant. Oh, or is it this one? Yeah, no, it's not a book. It's just like a little short article. There's a YouTube video on it. I'll put that in there.
Hey, welcome to the show.
Holy crap. Oh, that's only 10 minutes long. Never mind. Okay. So, any more takers?
Of the book that Private Nobody recommended?
The Most Dangerous Superstition.
What's it about?
Here. This. Here, let me play it since we got a little bit of time left.
Mr. Jones owned a cotton plantation and many slaves. One day he was talking to the owner of the plantation next to his, and Mr. Jones was lamenting the fact that times were tough. He was having to work his slaves harder than ever and was having trouble with some of them being disobedient or trying to run away. The other plantation owner said he knew someone who could help.
Day one.
One day, Mr. Jones called his slaves together so a man named Mr. Smith could talk to them. Before beginning, Mr. Smith whispered to Mr. Jones, "Whatever I say, do not contradict me or interfere, and I promise you your slave troubles will end." "My name is Mr. Smith," he said to the slaves, "and this may be the happiest day of your lives. From today forward, you will no longer be slaves, but free men." Mr. Jones was so shocked he started to step forward, but Mr. Smith gestured for him to remain silent. He did, only because the other plantation owner had spoken so highly of Mr. Smith's skills. "You are no longer the property of Mr. Jones," Mr. Smith continued. "You are free. No more would you be forced to labor for the benefit of Mr. Jones. Now you can work for yourselves." Now the slaves were all murmuring and looking at each other. Many were smiling, many were looking puzzled. "In fact, you are now free to leave the plantation whenever you want," Mr. Smith said. "However, since we are surrounded by other plantations, if you leave, some other plantation owner will likely claim you as his own the moment you set foot on his property. So I urge you not to risk your newfound freedom by doing something so foolish. Instead, I suggest that you stay here, no longer as slaves, but as willing participants and part owners of this plantation. Yes, this is now your plantation." Mr. Jones bit his tongue to keep from objecting. "For now, we might as well leave Mr. Jones in charge," said Mr. Smith, "since he's the only one with any experience at running a plantation, which is quite a complicated thing to manage. But he will no longer be your master, but just another worker on the plantation. In fact, he will now be using his organizational and management skills to serve you. Whatever problems you may have had with him before, you are now all equals, and you need each other to make this work. If we all cooperate and work together, we can all reap the benefits together. In honor of this happy occasion, I present you this new symbol of togetherness and cooperation, this flag, which shall be the emblem of the new free Jones plantation." He held up the new flag, but most of those listening were still too amazed to respond. "And this shall be our motto," Mr. Smith announced. "We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones Plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all. To celebrate, everyone has the rest of the day off. Enjoy your freedom, do as you please, and be back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, so that we may begin work on this great and noble new endeavor as equal free men." Finally convinced that Mr. Smith was serious, the former slaves applauded and cheered.
Day 2.
"We all want this plantation to do well," Mr. Smith said at the beginning of the next meeting, "so we can all share in the benefits. We all know that it takes a lot of effort to make a cotton plantation work. Just because you're all free doesn't mean you can stop working. In fact, since you're now working for yourselves, I expect you to work even harder than ever before, but now with pride and joy, knowing that you're working for yourselves. Of course, there still have to be rules. If everyone just does whatever he wants, the plantation won't produce anything. This experiment will fail, and we'll all starve. You should be thankful that Mr. Jones has agreed to stay on to lend his knowledge and skills to this endeavor, and I trust you will all do your own part to make this work. Several of you have been chosen to act as project supervisors to manage different aspects of the operation, to make sure everyone is doing his assigned job, to make sure that the rules are followed, and so on. The rest of you may head out to the fields to start your first day of work as free men."
Day 3.
The next morning, Mr. Smith had a grim expression on his face as the daily meeting began. "I have an unpleasant duty to do today," he said. "Yesterday, Charles was caught keeping some of the cotton he picked, presumably to sell for his own personal profit. That is against the rules. That is stealing. For that, Charles must be punished." Two men tied Charles to the whipping post. "I take no joy in this," Mr. Smith continued, "but you must understand, if we do not maintain order, if we do not have rules that we all abide by, then the plantation will fail, and we will all suffer." The whip cracked against Charles' back. "But if we all pitch in for the common good, then we can all prosper. Being free doesn't mean you should be selfish and greedy. We must each do our assigned duties and obey the rules, and then we can all benefit, and each of you will receive your appropriate share of the profits." A young man named Samuel stepped forward. "But if you and Mr. Jones decide the rules and whip us if we disobey, how is that any different from what we had before?" "How can you say that?" Mr. Smith asked. "I'm shocked. You were a slave before, and now you're free. Things still need to be managed and organized by those best qualified to do so. Do you know how to run a plantation, Samuel?" "Well, no," he answered. "But if we're free, why do we get no say in what the rules are and how things work?" "I'm surprised at your ingratitude," Mr. Smith answered. "None of you know how a plantation is run, so you're in no position to be making decisions about how things are done here. You don't seem to appreciate all the things that Mr. Jones provides for you, from protecting you from all the outside threats you know nothing about, those who would come here, capture and enslave you if not for Mr. Jones' protection, to making sure that you all have food and housing, tools to work with, that you're cared for when sick and injured, and so on. There wouldn't be a plantation at all, no cotton to pick, no land to plant and harvest, if not for him. You should be grateful that he's made possible the level of comfort you now have. Your lives would be far worse if not for him. Nevertheless, as free and equal participants in this endeavor, from now on at each meeting, any worker may have 2 minutes to ask questions or voice suggestions or complaints." With that, the workers all seemed satisfied and headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton.
Day 4.
"I have a big announcement," Mr. Smith said as the daily meeting began. "Mr. Jones' cousin is here, and not just to visit and see how our project is coming along. It has been decided that from now on, you will be deciding who will manage the plantation. Of course, this job can't be done by just anyone, but every 3 months we will have a special meeting at which all the workers will vote on whether we think Mr. Jones should run the plantation or whether we think his cousin, Mr. Johnson, should run the plantation. That means that ultimately you are in charge because you will be deciding which man you want running things on your behalf. If you don't like the way things are being managed, you now have the power to change it." Amazed and pleased, the workers headed out again to the fields to pick the cotton. Days passed, months passed, a year passed, and the plantation continued to operate as before. Sometimes Mr. Jones was in charge, sometimes Mr. Johnson was in charge, but the day-to-day routine stayed exactly the same. The workers worked hard, long hours every day, and still had little to show for it. Every day the meeting would begin with them all reciting the Jones Plantation motto, We work together as free men for our mutual benefit, pledging our allegiance to the Jones plantation, which stands for prosperity, liberty, and justice for all. One day, Mr. Smith announced, Samuel is asked to say a few words this morning, and whatever the rest of us may think of his ideas and opinions, we are all free here, and that means we are all allowed to speak our minds. So, Samuel, you have 2 minutes. Begin. Samuel stepped forward, looking scared. I was excited when all this started, he began, glancing nervously at Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones. But don't you all see what's happened here? Nothing's changed. We're all still slaves. There were grumbles of disagreement from the crowd. They tell us what to do and whip us if we don't. They still make all the rules and punish us if we disobey. They make suggestions and complain about things, but they never really change anything. They let us choose between Mr. Jones and Mr. Johnson, but what's the difference? The situation stays the same. We do all of the work, and they take as much as they want and decide how much they'll let us keep. They live in luxury, made rich by the cotton we pick. We do all the work and have to build our own huts, grow our own food, and take care of ourselves. They leave us just enough that we don't revolt or run away. This is not freedom. We're all still slaves. They've only changed the words they use, but nothing else has changed. They say we're all free and equal, but we're not. They command and we obey. That's not freedom. That's not equality. They say we're free to leave, but all that means is that we're free to be someone else's slave. Why should we work or obey the rules? We didn't agree to this. They made the system. They forced it on us. They control and rob us and call it freedom. They've deceived you into thinking that being able to choose which slave master you'll work for is the same as being free. It's not. Open your eyes. If you keep what you produce, they call it stealing. When they take what you produce, they call it sharing and fair distribution. Can't you see that this is all your time is up, Samuel? Mr. Smith announced calmly. At his gesture, 2 supervisors grabbed Samuel by the arms and led him to the whipping post. I'm sorry, Samuel, but you've broken the rules. There are rules against encouraging others not to work and encouraging others to break the rules. You're only hurting all of us with your discontentment and your complaining and your disobedience. The whip fell, and Samuel let out a grunt. Without rules, without order, all would be lost. Without law, there would be chaos. We can't just behave as wild animals, each doing whatever he pleases. We must all follow the plan and all do our duty for the betterment of everyone. And those who do not must be punished. The whip fell again, and blood flowed freely from Samuel's back. Samuel, it is you who are stealing from the others. When you don't do your assigned work, you are making more work for others. When you disobey the rules, it is you who are endangering the future of everyone else here. You are the thief. You are the criminal. You are the one trying to destroy the arrangement that keeps us all safe and prosperous. At every lash of the whip, the other workers cheered louder and louder, some yelling curses at Samuel. Being spoiled and selfish, you complain about everything, talking as if you're oppressed. But you are the one ruining things. You are the one keeping us from being all we could be. It is your greed and your rebelliousness that is hurting all of us. They all play by the rules, Mr. Smith said, gesturing at the others. What makes you think that you don't have to? You think you're above the law? There were loud yells of agreement as the whip fell again. We must maintain order, Mr. Smith proclaimed, to make this plantation great, to make it so that we can all be happy and prosperous. To have the society we want, there have to be rules. We all have to contribute our fair share to this great endeavor, and we cannot tolerate actions and attitudes that seek to undermine the amazing things that together as free men we have achieved and will continue to achieve. Mr. Jones was smiling as he gave Mr. Smith a pat on the back. The crowd was cheering so loudly that none of them had noticed that Samuel had died.
So that actually came from the book. It's an excerpt. And actually, that's the audio for it. So, okay, I'm going to stop the recording.